to Justice Quest.
Well, good morning, everybody. Yeah, we got an action-packed show for you today. We're going to be calling this Friday Frenzy. Whatever comes up, we'll talk about, and I go ahead and I get all my talking points from the news media, so we're going to be going ahead and covering some of those. We're also going to be covering Al Gore, an inconvenient truth. I call it a convenient lie, all right? And yet he perpetrated the biggest fraud in history, and we'll get into that a little bit longer. But we're going to be talking about the recent Supreme Court decision, the Venezuelan timeline, the HSBC laundering money for the drug cartels, and a few other items of interest. But we started talking about Obama on Wednesday, and on Wednesday it kind of broke after the show that he's going to be facing charges here shortly, and he could be subpoenaed for his involvement in the Mike Flynn fiasco. Now, I haven't looked into the Mike Flynn fiasco, but from what I understand, he was wrongfully accused and wrongfully imprisoned. So I'll go ahead and claim ignorance on that one. But he's going to be going ahead and facing a trial himself for what his role in that. And then, of course, it doesn't stop there. It also broke on Wednesday that he just opened up his presidential library, and he's not paying his contractors for the work they did. And these are Black-owned businesses. And they go ahead, and most of them were basically surviving, so they can't afford to have, $100,000 not paid, so, but anyway, yeah, I think the estimate for the library was 800 million, and it was just short of it. And they're saying the actual cost could actually run more than $1 billion. And I'll tell you what, I looked at that library and I thought, boy, that is one sad looking library. I thought that was even the Black Contractors Association said that is one ugly building, So I thought, oy. Yeah, his presidency was an embarrassment, and it's fitting that his library is an embarrassment too. He did more harm to this country than any other president before him combined. Oh boy! Let's just talk about the deficits. I mean, doggone, we were 11 trillion, and under his, it went to $26 trillion under his administration. Unbelievable. And the president since then have done nothing for it. But let me go ahead and tell you something, that we have not had a budget resolution since like 2011 or something like that. They just kept kicking a series of continuing resolutions and kept kicking the can down there, and nobody's putting the brakes on our budget. They are doing this on purpose, people. On purpose. They want to bankrupt this country, turn it into a third world banana republic. I call on President Trump to go ahead and have Congress start doing their job again, balancing the budget and passing a bill. Let's get our budget down to into the millions that we owe instead of the trillions. I thought, wow. Someone once went ahead and not too long ago, the difference between 1 million and 1 billion, and it was 1 million seconds is 11 days or something like that, 11, 13 days or something like that. 1 billion seconds is like 33 years. And thought, wow, that's something else. I actually broke out the calculator and did the math on that. It turned out to be true. Yeah. So I thought, wow, that's something else. All right. Now we're taking in $2 trillion every quarter in taxes. All right. It's time to go in and put a thing of it. And there's more and more fraud going on there in Minnesota. Again, I just read an article on the fraud in Minnesota is continuing. How, you ask? Well, that's easy. They've got what they call ghost students. They had one class set up there, and they signed up 50 students, all right? 48 of them went ahead and took the student loans, all right, and disappeared. Only 2 showed up for the class. Yeah. I wonder what ethnic group they were. Somalians. You know what? They seem to be pretty low IQ. You know what? We need to go ahead and tell states that they're on their own. Abolish the income tax. Our federal government should get back to the military, the post office, roads, and a justice system. That's it. And I'm not seeing much in the way of the justice system. And they go ahead and they lump up infrastructure bills, you know, to go ahead and install cameras and fancy systems. You know, you can't even go down to your local jail without filling out some federal questionnaire of who you're there to visit, and it goes into a federal database somewhere. When I was a correctional officer, after I got out of the Air Force, you know, you show up with an ID card, you check your name, and if you weren't in jail recently, you were allowed in to see a prisoner. You know, that was it. Now you got to fill out a questionnaire about who you're coming in to see, what's your relationship, you know, and this is all to build a profile on you. You know, come on now. You don't need to know all that. And yet, what's our congressman doing? Nothing. And I'm talking about senators and representatives. When I say Congress, that's what Congress is, are coming together as a group. Oh boy, I mean, there's just so much. We purposely go ahead and keep this show at an hour length so that you can absorb what's being said, you know, and we encourage you to take notes. Today's scripture is, do not put your trust in princes, out of Psalm 146, verse 3 through 7, all right? Because all their plans come to nothing when they die. You know, and they're going to go to the same place. They're going to be judged by the same God. Wow. That's it. You know, we went ahead and we'll get on to that later. But there was one election that I did not vote in. All right, one presidential election. We'll get into that a little bit later. But let's go ahead and look at past vice presidents. Let's take a look at Al Gore. All right. Al Gore was a term invented by Rush Limbaugh. It's all one word, Al Gore. Al Gore. Like he was Bill Clinton's evil assistant. Yeah. He was about as smart as a fence post. But actually, he was pretty smart. I'll get into that here in a minute. Okay, but not in a good way. He's one of those evil people I talked to you about earlier, about lying on their bed and say, how can I take advantage of the situation? You know, that's what evil people do. They lay in their beds. They're always scheming, dreaming and scheming. How can I take advantage of this new technology? How can I do this or do that? How's it going to benefit me? How's it going to put money in my pocket? And this is exactly what I'm going with this. Al Gore. Apparently, he was in Nashville, Tennessee recently, and the Babylon Bee went ahead and was there. And he's discussing his film, The Inconvenient Truth. Now, we'll get into that a little bit in a few minutes. And he was quoted as saying, quote, "I think the film was a great success, for me, that is. It may not have been true in any way, comma, but I sure enjoyed it. After all, I am now very, very rich." Now, when global warming started coming up, I thought, yeah, this is another passing fad, kind of like the hippie movement, which didn't die out quickly, but you had that twit up in Congress, the pushing a Green New Deal, and it was to supposedly combat climate change or global warming. All right, I'm going to use global warming because climate change that's a catch-all term. It may be hot one summer, cool the next. That's climate. All right, it changes. Yeah, it might have a cold winter. We might have a mild winter. All right. That doesn't mean anything's happening. That's just the way it works. All right. In fact, I would personally like to see colder winters because I've noticed that at 22 below zero, if it hits that 22 below zero here in North Dakota, I don't have any problems with potato beetles in my potatoes. Yeah, I can count on that. But he's there sitting there saying that I am now very, very rich. It may not have been true in any way. He admitted that his video, that everybody put so much invested in it. And I had a kid, we were discussing global warming. And I told him it was a hoax, and he went ahead and says, "Well, I challenge you to go ahead and read it and see what you think." And so anyway, I went out to the local video store and I rented the movie. And I think it was like $1.75 or something like that. And I spent an hour and a quarter, or hour and 3/4, 2 hours watching it. And I'll tell you what, anybody that's got two functioning brain cells that are firing in sequence can go ahead and poke the holes in this video. And that's exactly what I do. I came back to him and I told him, I said, "Well, I read it." And I said, and he goes, "Aren't you scared now?" I went, "No, not hardly, because none of it's happening." All right. And I'll tell you what, the very first scene when Al Gore comes up on stage, and he went ahead and has got a chart there stating that the temperature and the carbon dioxide in the earth, it had correlation. Carbon dioxide goes up, temperature goes up. Carbon dioxide goes down, temperature goes down, up, down, and it's always synchronized. Well, he got on that man lift. He says, now our carbon is now at 300 parts or 350 parts per million or something like that. I'm thinking, like, only 350 parts per million? That's not even noticeable. So anyway, that was number one. That's like, yeah, I just thought about that. I'm going to jot that down and cover that in a minute. But you know what? If that was going all the way up, don't forget the bottom line should have been following it. We would have been roasting at about 175, 200 degrees, and we didn't. We were not. Another interesting thing that was brought to my attention a few months later is the banks would not be loaning money to beachfront properties. In fact, they would probably be collecting them to get their money back, but yet still hotels were going up on the beach and they were still doing, do it. In fact, Al Gore himself, he bought two mansions that were in areas that would have been flooded by global warming if global warming was actually happening. So if you believe your own propaganda, and that's what I'm going to call it, propaganda, You would not be buying mansions in areas that are going to be flooded, you know. Tidal pools. You know, I saw a picture of tidal pools. You know, they were little pools built alongside rock faces that, you know, the ancient Romans could go ahead. They were always flooded at high tide, you know, and they were still flooded at high tide. They weren't going up. They weren't sunk down, you know. In fact, Al Gore went ahead and said that, you know, one time that there was fish swimming in the streets of Miami. If global warming was happening, Miami would be gone by now. I mean, doggone, and nobody's holding these people accountable. Nobody is holding these people accountable. He should be arrested for the greatest fraud scam ever perpetrated on the world and put on trial for it. Yet he's living the good life because he's one of those protected people. If I tried the same thing, if I tried the exact same thing, I'd be going to jail for fraud. Whenever you hear a politician doing something and they let him off scot-free, ask yourself that question. What would happen to me if I did that? That's the only question you have to ask. Is justice being served today? No. Do not put your trust in princes, people. I go ahead and I got a severe distrust of any politician, except me, of course, because I'm grounded in the Bible. In fact, before Donald Trump come on there, I was a Ted Cruz supporter because he's a born-again Christian, supposedly. I don't know if that's true or not, but he seems to be. Plymouth Rock is another area. In 1620, when the Plymouth Rock was right there at sea level. It's still there today at sea level. So it's not happening, people. But went ahead and but what Al Gore tried to do was set up carbon exchanges. Yeah, carbon exchanges. All right, how did that work? Okay, let's go ahead and break it down simply. All right, let's say you're a big company and your factory was built back in, let's say, the 1960s. Okay, so therefore it's not as efficient as it could be. So you're using up, let's use a round figure of 100 carbon. You know, you're adding 100 tons of carbon to the atmosphere every day or every year. Okay. So what happens is you've got a modern factory built they're assessed at, okay, 50 carbon credits. Okay, that's what they can put, but they're only putting 25 in the atmosphere. So they've got a 25 carbon credit surplus. Now they can go ahead and put it on 25 carbon credits on Al Gore's carbon exchanges, and that company could go ahead and buy those carbon credits to help with their output. You know, to go ahead and be at zero-sum game. And here's the deal. Nothing changes. The polluter is still putting in 100 carbon credits. The clean is still putting in 50 credit or 25 tons of carbon into the atmosphere. Nothing changes. Just the only thing that changes hand is money. And it goes to Al Gore. Yeah. That's what it says. You know, for having an IQ of about a fence post, you know, that was pretty smart of him. Oh, a book called Red Hot Lies came out and it detailed how this supposed temperature increase was measured. You know, they went ahead and they set one temperature thing was set above a barbecue grill, so it it was set on the garage with the owner's permission, and he barbecued out every weekend, you know. So the temperatures are going to be 20 degrees higher on the weekend, so that the temperature a little bit at average temperature. Other thermometers were put down on black asphalt parking lots where, in the summertime, those parking lots get pretty warm. And then about that time, the Soviet Union collapsed, so they had like 50 temperature monitoring stations that they could no longer afford to man, so they just dropped them, but they never dropped them off the total. So they kept in there, and that raised the temperature some more. And then there was the famous hockey stick event. All of a sudden the temperature dropped down there when they fired them back up. And they were panicking. How can we hide this? Well, they couldn't. They were public domain. And that's part of what's going on is nobody being held accountable. And that's what this show is all about. Exposing the fraud, exposing the cheating. And we're going to get into some really good ones here as the show goes on. Like I said, we go ahead and we try to keep to an hour so that, all the information is, I would love to go. I could do 3 hours easily, just like Rush Limbaugh used to do. But after, an hour, you kind of, people get tired, so we're going to go ahead and keep it to an hour, maybe an hour and a half as we start bringing advertisers on board. All right. Next thing I have on my list is gun control. Yeah, that's going to be one of the keystones of our show here is gun control, because that's how we keep our freedom, people. That's how we keep our independence. All right. You cannot go ahead and become a slave of man if you're armed. All right. Except by your consent. Turn in your guns. Okay. All right. No, that's not the way it works. Real man says, oh, yeah, you want to try now? That's what I'm saying. Being a Christian is not for wimps. Being a Christian takes a man, takes a real man. There was a potential mass shooting down in Georgia here not too long at a family gathering. And apparently a few of the party goers were armed, and they shot the mass shooter dead, so good for them. My hat's off to you. My hat's off anyway, but I go ahead and you did the right thing. You did the right thing. People, we got to go ahead and realize that is the reason that we were given the Second Amendment, all right? It wasn't for hunting deer. It wasn't for, whatever the left says they are. And by the way, the left goes ahead and says that guns are only used to kill people. Well, that's what the left uses them for. We use them for hunting. We use them for shooting. We use them for self-defense. We go ahead and we're on standby in case our government continues on this left turn that they've taken. That's how the Revolutionary War was started, when Britain tried to seize all arms and powder stores of the colonists. That's when they said, nope, enough. That's when it is. That's why I say, on this show, and I do not pull any punches about this. You have a politician that supports gun control in your area. It's your duty to take care of them. How is up to you. But I would say at minimum, a good tar and feathering. And run them out of town on a rail and put the next one up there and say, next. My solution is a bit more permanent, because they'll just go somewhere else and start their crap all over again. You go ahead and you hang them, problem's over. They've gone ahead and violated their oath of office. And we covered that before. And speaking of gun rights, Supreme Court of the United States decision to allow reefer smokers, that's marijuana for those of you that aren't familiar with it, access to arms. A 4473 question about drug usage. Are you under the influence of narcotics or illegal drugs? Yeah, I think is what how the question's worded. And so they're gonna have to get rid of that question now. So we are going to sit there and allow drug users access to firearms. That's a bad idea. First of all, you know what, you need to go ahead and combat the drug usage at the user's end, not combat some drug gang down in Mexico or Venezuela or whatever. I'm for bringing back the chain gangs. You get caught doing drugs, you're out there picking up trash. You're up there doing beautification. Whatever else we can think of. I don't care if it's, you make a all right, 0 degrees is the cutoff here in North Dakota. All right. Yeah, below 0, you don't have to go out. But I'll tell you what, if it's above 0, you're going to be out there every day picking up trash. You're going to be up there picking up tires. You're going to be up there wherever we can put you to work at to do something. And if you don't work, you don't eat. That's scriptural too. We'll get to cover that another time. No, you want to go ahead. Yeah, this war on drugs, we failed. We have failed. Every president in the United States has gone ahead and continued the war on drugs. And it's a big sham. I'll tell you why. Because how do you think this CIA is going ahead and covering their black operations? Yeah, through drugs. They were behind the shipment of opium out of Vietnam to Russia because they were trying to destroy the Russian will to fight. Okay. Go ahead and take them down to acquiescence. It's the same thing that China and Russia are doing now with fentanyl. They're importing into this country to go ahead and poison our youth. And this is another area I go ahead and I disagree with Trump on. Oh man, I'll tell you what. You put that crap in your veins, you know what? You deserve what you get. You die, you overdose, yeah. That's it. You can go on and on and on about this. I forget where I read that at, but it wasn't like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, maybe. Or maybe I heard it on something, but and it makes perfect sense. This is why we're not going to win the war on drugs. There's too many people with their hands in the big drug dealers' pockets. And we're going to let's go ahead and I'll give you a classic example. HSBC, Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation, got caught laundering $881 billion with a B for drug cartels. They were fined $1.9 billion. No one went to jail over it. Why not? Because they're too big to go to put in jail. No, they should go to jail. So we've been shanghaied again. Hong Kong Shanghai Bank Corporation has shanghaied us again. And this is for all you socialists out there that want to go ahead and bring America into the light of socialism. I don't see what's so great about it. I studied the Soviet Union back in my early days in the Air Force, and I found out there's nothing great about this. I mean, doggone, yeah, they were all the arms were confiscated way back when in the 1920s, and so they couldn't resist the government. And they went ahead and people were throwing battery acid in people's faces and robbing them, right? Same thing just happened here in the United Kingdom not too long this past week. Amazing how that comes around, isn't it? So you go, all you people who think, I went to a sandwich shop down in Fargo one time, and there was this young man spouting off to his mother about how great socialism, and we suffered through this for half an hour. And I had to go and say something. And so I went ahead and I walked up to the kid and I said, "You're stupid." And his mom kind of looked at me and, like quizzically, and I said, "All you are doing is you're a foot soldier for the communists." And then she started nodding, like she approved of what I was saying, And I said, communism doesn't make everybody equally miserable except for those at the top. I said, look into the history of every communist country in the world, and you'll see that today. The Chinese kind of tweaked it a little bit, and they called it managed socialism or something like managed free enterprise or something like that, whatever that means. But they're still called the Chinese Communist Party. But anyway, people always tell me, but Tom, you can't go ahead and compare communism from even 50 years ago to what's happening today. I went, oh, yes, you can. Remember Venezuela? Let's go ahead and review the Venezuela timeline. 1992, they were the third richest country in the hemisphere. Third richest, all right, due to all the oil they had and other minerals. They were the second largest purchaser of F-150 in 1997. All right. In 2001, all right, this was 25 years ago, socialist president elected on the phrase of income equality. They were feeling so guilty that, we got to go ahead and have income equality. All right. That's exactly what's happening in this country. And I'll go ahead and I'll tell you why here in a few minutes. 2004, they privatized healthcare, socialized it. They socialized private healthcare. All right, the government took it over. Yeah. In 2007, higher education becomes free. You want to go to college? Yep, no problem. In 2009, the socialists banned guns. Yeah, look where that led. How come they always do that? Why are they doing it today in this country or trying to? Nobody's asking that question. Use this gray matter that God gave you. In 2012, 3 years after that, Bernie Sanders praises their American dream, quote unquote. In 2014, the opposition political party, the leaders are imprisoned. In 2016, you had food and healthcare shortages. Boy, how does that always work? In 2017, Constitution and elections suspended. In 2019, unarmed citizens are massacred by government. Oh boy, how about that? It's always the way it works. That's always the way it works. Verbatim. You can't tell me any different. Back in, it must have been about 97, 98 now. I was kind of cruising the internet, and I ran across this little film. It was about 2 hours and 20 minutes long, if I remember right. But it was called Iron Mountain Blueprint for Tyranny. Okay. And two of the things that they did, and everything mentioned in there, this is coming to pass. One was, they're going to disband all armies, and they were going to make the climate the big enemy. That's how our soldiers are going to be. What our soldiers are going to be fighting? No, I don't think that's what the soldiers are for. The other thing is that we're going to go ahead and make healthcare a big issue, and that worked. That worked. It worked so well that Obama went ahead and come up with the Obamacare. It worked so well that Bill Clinton fronted HMOs, health management organizations, when he wanted to go ahead and privatize or socialize healthcare. Remember Hillary Clinton coming on there? She would put in there the healthcare czar. She went ahead and was answering questions. Oh yeah, you'll be covered. 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 The big you'll be covered. I'm about covering my ass. Don't put your faith in princes, people. I don't care. Democrat, Republican, they're all working for the big banks. They've all been compromised in some way, shape, or form to go ahead and do the bidding of the New World Order. I can't go ahead and stress that enough. Oh, by the way, hit that like and follow and subscribe button, and go ahead and get to our website and hit that donate now button, because we definitely need donations. We are operating off of my cash, and we've got rent to pay, we've got bandwidth to pay for, we've got improvements to the studio I want to do, and we made a big improvement with the sound, so hopefully there's other things we'd like to do. So anyway, with that, let's go ahead and continue on with the marching socialism. But getting back to that video, Iron Mountain Blueprint for Tyranny, it's amazing. That book was written back in 1959 by somebody who actually attended the Iron Mountain Conference. All right, and I've met two people that actually read the book, and they said, yeah, it's true, and it's coming true today. And I thought, wow. I thought, this isn't just some internet hoopla thing that they're trying to go ahead and take advantage of and whip us up into a frenzy. And that's funny. I go ahead and I cruise the internet, and I see outlandish claims. I go ahead and I verify it through 2 or 3 other sources. I look at who actually wrote it. If Fox News did, it's fairly reliable. We just quoted something from the Babylon Bee. All right, it hasn't made it to. I went in and tried to verify that through Google, and I hadn't made Google yet. But the Babylon Bee, that's why I went ahead and reported. They're fairly reliable. So. Let's get down to the Obama-McCain election. That is the only presidential election in my lifetime since I've been able to vote that I haven't voted for somebody. And I had a neighbor that told me, that Tom, you'll vote for anybody that has R in front of their name. No, I won't, is what I told him. Well, it happened to be that McCain was running against Obama. And here's what I found out. His fellow prisoners in that POW camp he was sent to in North Vietnam were saying that he got the best treatment, he got the best food, he got the best clothing, he got the best of everything, all right? That means that he sold out his country. In other words, if you didn't talk, you were tortured. If you didn't talk, you weren't fed properly. If you didn't talk, you know how it goes. These are bad guys. This is what bad guys do. But if you give up your country's secrets, we'll treat you really good. Yeah, kiss my butt. People, we got to start using this gray matter that God gave us. I went in and I showed you, at the beginning of the show, about Al Gore's thing, The Inconvenient Truth. I could go ahead and take a look at that, and not one thing he said in here was true. I mean, he went up to the North Slope of Alaska, and he went in and filmed it, and the ice had retreated 40 miles, as it does every summer, and yet he went in and portrayed that as This is what's happening now. We'd have no more ice up here. Well, I could tell it was summertime because there's light up there. Yeah, that's probably filmed in August when it was the warmest. What's something else I spotted in that movie? The tidal pools, yeah, of course, and oh man, we might have to go ahead and play this just to go ahead and look at it. I might have to look at it and take notes. Yeah. He didn't change my mind. I looked at it and I poked holes in every one of his theories. Why? Because I live here in North Dakota. If we were living here in North Dakota, we're still seeing 25, 30 below zero. Yeah, and then global warming is not happening. And back in about 1100, and it's all pointed out the same temperature increase. It was like a degree centigrade, which is about 2.12 degrees. The same temperature increases that were measured here on Earth were measured on the moon. So that makes it a solar event. Yeah, solar meaning sun. The sun burns hotter and cooler. In fact, for 200 years, back in about 1300, 1200, something like that, they were raising grapevines in Scotland. That's how warm the weather was. I'm sure all the glaciers melted then. People, we don't have a problem with the climate. We don't have a problem with crime. We don't have a problem with anything. We have a problem in having the stones to go ahead and combat it. We have a problem with holding Al Gore accountable for perpetuating fraud on the entire world. And you know what? That's another thing. Not one thing happened, but they all result in higher taxes, which we're probably still paying today. Global cooling was the big thing back in the 70s. Remember that? I remember our local things that we won't feel the full chill for about another 10,000 years. Yeah, they were predicting another ice age. Well, we went through all the 80s and it was beautiful weather. Beautiful weather. And I kept thinking to myself, where's this global cooling at? And then about the mid 80s, they changed it from global cooling to global warming. Now they just call it climate change to mean whatever they want. That's how they frame the language, people. And you can't go ahead and listen to them, Al Gore, in my mind, is the world's biggest criminal. And he ought to be strung up. Yes, I said it, and you heard it here. We're either going to live our lives in an orderly society or we're not, all right? If we're going to go ahead and deteriorate into a third world banana republic, well, then keep going the way we're going. We've got Antifa going ahead and confronting ICE on the streets for deporting illegal aliens. For crying out loud, they're doing their job. We got George Soros paying protesters to show up at whatever protest he wants protested. And nobody's going ahead and looking at him for funding the protests. We've got a Muslim invasion going on here. I mean, the one country in EU, and I forget which one it was, I just read it this morning again. They went ahead and they celebrated the fact that they're going to increase mass deportations. They're going to get rid of them. The Netherlands have gone ahead and defined it as an epidemic. Yeah, you got Muslim gangs running around raping women on the streets. I mean, doggone, man. You don't let in people who come in here and want to take over. Even Obama, when he's with Muslims, he's gone ahead and he's a Muslim. He's been quoted at Muslim dinners saying, "I am a Muslim at Islamic dinner." You know, he went ahead and he told Egypt's president that, you know, if it comes between you and Israel, I will back you. And he started the importation of the Muslims. Get them out. If they're not going to assimilate, and I'm not talking about the ones that actually become Christians, all right? I'm talking about the diehard Muslims that want to go ahead and sit here and take over our country. That's their MO. They move into an area, they want to take it over, they do. There's areas in Paris where the police won't go because they're controlled by Muslims. Minneapolis, I saw a Sharia law police car. Minnesota. I mean, they're so deep in corruption right now. You got to go ahead and take the entire legislature out and shoot them. Start over, and let's clean up our act. Man, my head's ready to explode, and it's Friday. Man, this should be good for Monday. This is why I say we're coming to the end times, people. It's about time you people who think that this is a battle you're going to stay neutral on. I've sat there talk with what I believe were true Christians, and when you're sitting there battling make-believe Christians, they say, "Well, I knew you were right, but I didn't want to say anything." That's why we'll lose. That is why we will lose. We are not going ahead. We do not present a united front. The left is great at making us feel like we're alone. That's one of their great things, divide and conquer. We have to go ahead and learn to take a stand, and you have to take a stand for righteousness. If you think you're going to remain neutral in this, then you're going to go ahead and side with the enemy. God says in his word in Revelations that cowards will not inherit the kingdom of God. Cowards. I think that's in Revelation 19. Let me go there real quick. 17, 18, 19. Well, that's not it. Well, anyway, it's in there. I'll find it for you, and I'll go ahead and quote it to you on Monday. We go ahead and have to stand by and say that, no, I stand for God. And if we don't, we're going to, if you see a thief and you say nothing, then you have thrown in your lot with the adulterers. In other words, you're as guilty as them. That's what this show is all about. We are going to hold people accountable. I still call my senators and my representative, and you know what, we got to do this, and it's up to them whether to do it or not. I went ahead and I called Kevin Kramer on his radio talk show one time, and I said, we got to stop this Muslim invasion. We got to get rid of them. They're here to take over. And he said, oh, well, they have the freedom of religion. Religion is not sedition. If you're importing a people that are going ahead and their main goal is to take over the world, and which they have gone ahead and said they are out to do, then that should tell you something. That should tell you something. We went ahead and let's see, Psalm 146 also. I think I quoted this earlier. No, it wasn't 146. It was that I will go ahead and shoot arrows into the speech of evildoers. They go ahead and they tell you what they're going to do, people, and that's God doing it. He is sitting there warning you what you're going to do, and you're just sitting there, okay, wondering what's on HBO tonight. Yeah. I wonder what's the latest thing on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, you know. You got to go ahead and learn to take a stand, people. You got to learn to speak up boldly. You're going to have to learn to go ahead and say, if you're not going to do it, we'll put somebody else in there who will. Because you want your daughter sold into sexual slavery? That's what the Muslims do, and they're doing it here in this country. I want to go ahead and let you people know that, you know, and yet the left is sitting there continuing to go ahead and call for gun control. Well, yeah, how are you supposed to protect your family with that going on? Yeah, this is a multi-pronged attack, people. It's not just one long issue. And they can go ahead and turn it, oh, this is for the children. We got to go ahead and keep the children safe. Yeah, I'll keep my gun and keep my own children safe. You know, and I told you the story about when I was on council back in my town there. And, you know, somebody brought up something that said, we got to do this for the children. Well, that seemed to be Hillary Clinton's thing, is to go ahead and, you know, our children are not going to go extinct. You know, we got to do something for the children. How about going ahead and stopping all these vaccines that are making a mill? How about going ahead and actually getting the FDA some teeth? Let's get junk science out of the political realm and get back to real science. You know, we went ahead and in one third world country, I forget what company it was. So I'm not going to even say which company I think it was. But anyway, they convinced all the women that had just given birth to give up breastfeeding and do formula. This is why we're calling this Friday Frenzy, because we're going to go anywhere. No comments yet, so feel free to leave a comment. And then what happened was the formula got tainted. Several thousand infants died, you know, and then they starved to death because the women didn't have no breast milk. Yeah, wow. But yet the company went out and put profits over safety. That's how it works, people. The almighty dollar speaks. We need more, 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 more. Well, we're going to wrap it up for today. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. And we go ahead and ask that the Lord go ahead and protect and preserve us. And I'm asking you to wake up. You know, it's amazing, you know, how many times over the last 3 decades we were all called conspiracy theorists. I went ahead and I raised the red flag about an inconvenient truth, and I was shouted down as a conspiracy theorist. Oh, yeah, it's happening, it's happening, it's happening. Where? I don't see it happening anywhere. Oh, yeah, well, Al Gore says, well, Al Gore is wrong. How do you know? Yeah. called junk science, people. Remember the big egg scare? That back in the 70s? Well, that was funded by the breakfast food cereals, like Kellogg's, Frosted Flakes or whatever. What was another one? Whoever. But they went in and said eggs were loaded with cholesterol. Well, they used powdered eggs in their thing, which are loaded with cholesterol. Powdered eggs were designed to be fed to troops, okay, so they keep their energy levels up. So that's what I'm saying, junk science. We got to go ahead and stand up for what's right. We have to go ahead and say, that's why I said I don't trust the science anymore. Because the science says, well, whoever's paying, we'll give you whatever results you want, who's paying the bills. Yeah. Oh, boy. We go ahead and we have to realize, people, that there is an ultimate truth in the universe, and that is God. If it's contrary to God's word, it is false. The LGBTQRSTUVWXYZ, they are sitting there trying to justify their immoral lifestyle. So with that, I said thank you for tuning in, and we will see you on Monday at 11 a.m. at justicequestlive.com. We go ahead and have a good weekend, and I am planning on it. So with that, I will say thank you for tuning in, and we will see you on Monday. All right.